Today, I am interviewing Dan, a good start, Dan Hegerich. And I've probably got his name slightly wrong because I'm dyslexic, so he'll correct me in a moment, who is incredibly a 6 times cancer survivor, turned heroic performance life coach, serving to make a contribution to the eradication of chronic degenerative disease as part of the human experience through hope, HOPE, helping other people evolve into their true, authentic nature and the 7 elements of optimal health and healing. Do the cure, he says. Miracles don't just happen, they are created. And you are the creator. Wow, what an introduction. Okay, Dan, please tell me, how did you, well, first of all, let's start with the cancer. First of all, amazing. Cancer is one of the most scary things I think we have in society today. And 6 times you've come up against it and you've beaten it. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think we could spend a whole weekend on it. And because the story goes very deep and wide into what I like to call the return to self. So when I was 29 and I was following the American dream, the American script, we all know it as get a good education, get a good paying job, find a partner, get a house, have kids, save for retirement, invest, and then set off into the sailing suns and have grandchildren and then die. I kind of add that up to the Catholic Church that I was born in and raised in. Suffer, die, and get buried. So that's the script.
Yeah.
And so I found myself at 29 checking some of those boxes off. But I was in the office of Dr. Lawrence Cloud because I was really sick, very sick. And I wanted to know, why am I so sick? They took a biopsy on a lymph node here in the clavicle area of the lymph nodes. And he was an old school Harvard doctor, oncologist. And he was standing up to greet me, he had his hands out to shake my hand. And we met eye to eye. And he had one question. And he asked, Dan, how did such a young man such as yourself get into the business of cancer? Now, that's how he told me I had cancer.
Gosh.
No tears, nothing, just like almost like an unscripted, energetic something that intervened that we don't know. And I took that question and it went through all my egoic defenses. So the better part of myself, the awareness part, the higher self, if you want to call it, said, how did I get here? Now, because that came from the higher self, my mind went to answer the question. And in that moment, I tell everyone jokingly, I said, if I was more Christ-like, would I be here right now? And I was like, no. And I don't like to use the God thing, but that's what happened. But I interpreted it as I was not living my true authentic self. I was living an ignorant and arrogant life of life. My body is life. It is the church that holds my spiritual essence. And I was living an ignorant, arrogant life, meaning I was disrespectful for this body and my mind. And there was other things that came up in that eternal moment. Then he asked, or he made a statement. He said, Dan, with a little bit of pain and suffering, you will grow stronger. What that interpreted as, if I can get in touch with my true authentic nature and live from there, I'm going to enter the pain in order to get that part of me stronger.
Gosh.
So that is something I call return to self, the real self, the true self. Rather than being the victim, the villain, or the false self, and all the demons playing out in my life, which they were in some ways, not always. I mean, I was definitely not that drastic of a human being, but I was not living authentically. And so that had me living essentially like the genie's trapped in a bottle, like hardened by whatever traumas that were unresolved that were being expressed by my behaviors. that it would be considered normal, like typical American living, drinking, drugs, or experimenting with all these things, hedonistic, if you want to call it that, chase pleasure, avoid pain.
Yes.
So I took that question as a student of life in some ways, that this could be my life thesis. If I could answer that question, I could help a lot of people. First, I could save my soul, the one that showed up that day and listened, and I could help a lot of other people along the way. But I didn't realize, how am I going to do this? Like, I have no idea. And the only thing I knew was the modern medicine of chemo, radiation, and that's what he had to offer, of course. But I had the idea, it's like, that doesn't answer the question. I didn't get into this cancer business because I didn't have enough chemo growing up. I didn't get my radiation, like vaccines or something, to prevent it. No, that's not what that doesn't answer the question. But it can buy me the time to find out what that question, the answer to that question might be. So I'm going to come into this and I'm going to do what you're offering in order to buy me time to answer the question. But I had known that I was not living authentic. It was a knowing. Right. And in that moment, I had a knowing. This is a weird thing. I had a knowing I was not going to die from cancer in this lifetime. But I didn't know how. No. And so here we are meeting. And he did. He goes, well, look, you picked the wrong cancer. You maybe got 5 years, no matter what you do.
Oh my
and
goodness.
As the tumor markers became more apparent, and I went through chemotherapy for 8 months, it relapsed. I went through a bone marrow transplant, it relapsed. I went through another round of chemo, which was another 6 months to 8 months. Then I relapsed. Then I had tumors in my spine and in my muscles, and so they did a lot of radiation to the spine, and then it relapsed again shortly thereafter for the fourth relapse, fifth time. And then I was on course. I said at one point, I might be going a little fast because I get passionate about this, and so I hope the listeners can follow me. I do have that monkey mind that can get out of the cage, as I mentioned to you earlier. So
no, I'm loving it. They can always slow the playback. They've got that option. Carry on.
Yeah, there's a lot of golden wisdom that was born out of my conscious suffering. So in 1995, when I went through the bone marrow transplant, that was really hard on me. Hard on my soul, hard on my body, hard on everything. My wife at the time. And 6-8 weeks after that bone marrow transplant, I relapsed. Unheard of. They were hoping to get me a year of no cancer. That was their hope. And my oncologist for that time actually broke the news to me that it looks like those tumor markers are a 12-month survival rate. That's what you got. And they wouldn't tell me that, and in all fairness, that probably could have been a problem. But the way my bone marrow transplant nurse, primary nurse, her and I had a deep connection, and I'll get into that a little bit because I don't want to leave people down and ghost you on that. I'll bring it back, how deep of and meaningful she was. So here I am with the relapse, and my wife at the time and I were discussing it. And I said, look, I just think I want to run the cancer, run its course. And of course, at 30 something years old, my wife is like, and we're just married. She wants the American dream, of course, the family, the picket fence or whatever. And she grabbed me. She just literally just dug deep and said, you got to do it. And that brought an image of the first Rocky movie or the second Rocky movie where Adrian was talking to Rocky, and Rocky was in the hospital, and she said, Rocky, listen, win, buddy, win. Like, win, Rocky, win. And that's what I heard. So there was this amazing feeling that took over. And I like to give people the analogy that she, in that moment, was willing to die for me, and I was willing to live for her.
Amazing.
That's what it felt like as I look back and did a lot of reflection on it, of the feeling. And I said, okay, I'm going to have to make a serious commitment to changing my diet and exercise program.
Mm.
And that's what I want everyone to take away. Everything comes down to diet and exercise, everything. And I want you to upgrade that language to nutrition and movement. Because everyone is on a diet. I don't care what diet it is. I don't care. You're on a diet. You're on a food diet, but you're on a life diet.
Mm-hmm.
So diet is everything that you put into your eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and on your skin. Because we consume everything. It comes in and enters in, and then we have to filter it and extract the information that we're getting from it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So everyone's on a diet. But that doesn't mean that diet is nourishing. And we know it's not nourishing. Just look at the health of our countries.
Yeah. Totally.
It's not nourishing. The way you're living is not nourishing you at the deepest levels, and even at the practical level. It's not nourishing. And it makes us move in a certain way when we're malnourished. So we move competitively. We move by the victim. We move by the villain. We move by our demons. We move from our shadow is the one that was leading the way, not our light.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, I have to get my diet and exercise right, which means I have to learn how to nourish this body, which is a feminine energy, to learn to nourish. Movement is masculine, to get into action, to be into action, to the change you want to see in the world, if you want to use Gandhi's quote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if I want to change my situation, I'm going to have to change my diet and exercise, upgrade that to nutrition and movement. And that's what I did. So I started studying it. And a week later, without any communication with my sister, Lori, she gave me a book on nutrition.
Oh, brilliant.
So there is the sign that I'm starting to open up to my true authentic nature, because the universe provides with less effort.
Yes.
The effort is to receive and accept the universe's gift. That's the effort.
Yes.
In the beginning. Because we had a tendency to reject it.
Mm-hmm.
That's rejecting the true self.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate rejection. Anyone that has abandonment issues and rejection issues, that's the ultimate abandonment and the ultimate rejection, is our true authentic self, our soul, our daimon, our hero, our creator. Miracles don't just happen. They are created. You are the creator. So the creator is always tripped up by the victim. Always.
Yes.
I'm not the creator of my reality. You are. You caught it. Yada, yada, yada. So I was in a massive shift of taking responsibility for my life. And the egoic sense of identity was so strong that I had to go through this incredible journey of into my unconscious suffering with my conscious higher self. I call that conscious healing. And nutrition and movement was in. So that led us down to the path where in 1996, the spring, the bone marrow transplant failed. I went through chemo. In the spring, I stopped all chemo to train and ride a bike for charity, to be of service and to be a part of society.
Gosh,
and I rode a 65-mile bike ride on the island of Martha's Vineyard with a friend and a group. And I think it was for MS. And I felt like, you know what? I'm being supported by the universe. I got a book. I got an idea. I have something's happening. So I want to give back. And then in the bone marrow transplant process, a bunch of people were riding on my behalf for the Pan Mass Challenge, a 200-mile bike ride. So I said, if I'm alive a year from now, I'm going to ride that event.
Oh, wow. Super.
So I stopped the chemo in May of 2000, which they were upset because they have an experimental protocol for me that I fit the bill. And I said, I don't care about your experiments. I don't care. I'm not your experiment. I'm the experiment. I'm the scientist. I'm the spirit. I'm going to take my experiment on, and I'll take responsibility for my death. You're not responsible for my death or my life. So
patient responsibility.
So I trained that summer. I put 1,500 miles on my bike. I rode that 200-mile bike ride the year after I had my bone marrow transplant.
Wow.
And after I did that ride in the fall, that's when the tumors came back in my spine.
Oh,
So I thought I was living
oh,
high on life. I thought everything was like, okay, I got a path. I think I'm on it. I'm starting to cut that path. But no, I have to go deeper. I have to go deeper. There's more lessons in here. More lessons. And of course, I always fell back into some of my old habits, and not drastically, but they were still there.
mm,
So I dug deeper and I went through radiation. I had twice a day, first day in the morning and the last one at night. I had to travel an hour and a half each way by car, and then I had to go and get radiation to the front of my spine and the back of my spine.
oh,
So
exhausting.
it was a pretty aggressive process
Totally.
for 13 days straight. Then come the spring of that year, the cancer came back again. And I stopped all chemo in the May of 1997. And I said, I'm never doing chemotherapy ever again. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have a path. I'm starting to learn corrective exercise, corrective holistic exercise kinesiology with the CHEK Institute. And I went into their internship because I started to take the body apart in order to see what's missing and what needs to be replaced.
Fantastic.
And started learning about the body. And it led me to the CHEK Institute and Paul Chek's work. And I started to really feel an amazing push to, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, at least at that time. So in 97, I started studying with his protocols and his school, but he had an abundance of resources, and I was able to take advantage of that. And I started to feel great. I started to really feel like I was moving in the right direction. My wife said, wow, this is remarkable in some ways that I went 2 years now without any cancer. Longest ever, right, that I've ever been under. But that was when she decided to leave for another man.
Oh.
So that was another form of cancer coming from the blind side.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
after all you'd been through.
yeah.
Oh.
So it presented her, she didn't see it as our life was going to pull together because she didn't want to go down that path of diet and exercise. She didn't want to go down that path of nutrition and movement. She didn't want to go down that path, I guess. And I'm putting words, of course, right?
Yeah.
It was just young love. And
Yeah.
she found another guy that could fulfill what she felt was her dream for her life.
Mm-hmm.
However, I want the listeners to know that could be painful. And I know a lot of women feel their heart just jumped out of their throat. But here's the deal. Put it back in your chest and understand that when that happened, it brought up to the surface all my insecurities about me as a man. So I got to see what was there unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, wow, I used the questioning that I guess you could say my stoic oncologist initially gave me that question. I asked myself a question, Dan, why are you suffering for her choice?
Okay. That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Why do I need to suffer for her choice?
Mm-hmm.
And what happened in that question, my mind went to answer the question. It said, Dan, you've been putting your happiness into the people, places, and things of the world.
Mm.
And you're left with holding them responsible for your happiness.
Yeah. Gosh.
Which also means you're putting responsibility for your unconscious unhappiness on them. And I was like, whoa, that's a powerful thing. So that meant that when she left for another man, there goes my happiness. I'm left with the unhappiness, and I'm blaming her for the unhappiness.
Mm-hmm.
That's a mistake. It's my unhappiness that's unresolved.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another epiphany where I said, I got to learn how to be happy for who I am and stop self-validating and self-loving this person, right? Which led me to say, I need to know and embody what does it mean to be joyful or joy-filled? Because there's no such thing as unjoying. No one can take it away and no one can give it to you. There's no polarity in that word.
No.
So I went and I started studying happiness. I went to the Option Institute because Barry Neil Kaufman's work at the Option Institute, he wrote the book, Happiness is a Choice. Unhappiness is a choice.
Yes.
Whoa, okay. Why? Listeners, listen, lean in. If you are unhappy, it's because you know what it means to be happy.
Whoa.
You cannot know unhappiness unless you know what it means to be happy. So therefore, you have a choice.
You do. You absolutely
and
do.
I can honestly say that's partly more painful than the tumor to come into that, to come in contact with that. So that led me into a path of learning, what does it mean to love myself? And I had the experience with my ex-wife, the divorce process, the separation, that led me to trigger a mental bipolar mixed episode. So I was anxious and depressed at the same time.
Whoa. Crikey.
It was really crazy, but it showed my Gemini stance. I didn't know. I was on the gas pedal and I was on the brake. So that's what it felt like. And they tried to give me medication to stabilize it, but it wasn't working. It was actually making that matter worse. It was feeling more crazy in a sense, to the point where the polarity of the burning desire to want to live fully in my true authentic nature and this fear driven of, am I going to die? Am I going to get cancer again? And, this whole fear, what's my identity in the world? Nobody loves me. Nobody likes me. This whole polarity. So the only thing I knew what to do was to fulfill my confirmation in the Catholic Church, just as something to lean into, because I didn't know anything else. So I went to this church locally and I said, hey, I'm not confirmed. So why don't we confirm me? That was a weekly thing. I show up. I just went through the motions kind of thing, but at least I was in some sort of environment that wasn't hospital and doctor and psychiatrist. Because they can't talk to my parents. They don't know. It would have been thrown right back in my face. They would have blamed me for it or something. It just wasn't someone I could talk to. So I talked to my ex-in-laws at the time.
Wow.
They were incredibly supportive. But it led me to this deepening of this polarity, this polarization of who I'm capable of being and who I'm actually being, this polarity. And that pulling apart came to its final peak one morning, and I wound up wanting to end the pain. I wanted to kill myself. So I found a gun club to get access to a gun. I took the gun lessons and safety lessons. And then one morning, the pain was too great. I hadn't slept for a week and I was just not with it. I had no community of support that I could trust. So I left, I went to the gun club and I went into the gun club and it was actually divinely set up. It's just amazing how this was set up. Nobody in the gun club that day, except for the guy at the front of the register. So I went into the gun range with this 22 caliber pistol and I had a conversation in my head going. And it went something like, you're not going to kill yourself. You're too much of a coward. And I'm like, what that? I'm going to show you. So I was puffing up. And that went back and forth for about 5 minutes until I started to feel this real angst and I'll show you. No, you won't. You can't. You're a girl. You're wimpy and all this language. But then the real self, this third entity, the something else came in and said, hey, if the two of you are going to argue like that, why don't you take a shot at the target? Try to hit the center of the bullseye. And the two of them said, yeah, okay, that sounds fine.
My goodness.
It's just like, all right, we're not getting anywhere. Yeah. Let's go for it. So I aimed so profoundly to that center of that target with the intent of just focusing on the target. That target started to expand and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it finally the only thing that was there was me and the target. nothing else. I didn't even see anything. It was just the target. And I emptied all the bullets into the target. And after I was done, in that moment that I was shooting them, there was nothing, no pain, no cancer, no divorce, nothing. The only thing that showed up there was an intelligent, humorous, smiling being.
Mm.
And I looked at the gun and I said, guns don't kill people. It's the suffering of man that kills people. This gun, paradoxically, just saved my soul. Because all I need to do is learn how to love that self that showed up, that said, take a shot at the target. That's all I need to do.
That's self-love.
That's it. And so I didn't know what to do. And I had a couple of days of just an amazing experience that actually was just as problematic, because then I was like, how do I share this with someone? I'm on psychiatric care. I didn't have anyone to share this with.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Until finally, I was so suffering with this semi-bottoming out in awareness, that I signed up and I went into the psychiatric ward just to do something, because I didn't want to go back into that pain. So I was like, I got to make a choice. I went into the psychiatric ward. I signed myself in. Psychiatrist that I was under care obviously sent me there. And I went in, I was being observed by 3 psychiatrists, probably a couple of interns and 1 lead. And I just explained what was happening as I did here. And then I said, I just need to learn how to self-love myself back to well-being. That's the answer to cancer.
Wow.
And they go, no, Dan, that's your mental illness talking. You need medications.
Oh, helpful. Yeah, very helpful.
Well, it was, and it really did it. That was societal abandonment. That's the tribe turning their back. Because I found out what I needed, but they don't offer that as a product or service.
No.
So it trumped them. They became defensive. Their victim, their villain, their demons became super active, because love is not part of that as a general system. It's in the individuals, some individuals, but the actual system, the framework, they don't offer that as a product or service. So they didn't know how to do it. So they have to defend their own livelihood by saying, hey, we got to get your medications right, because that's my livelihood.
Oh, God.
Anyway, so I felt really the sense of social abandonment and rejection and anger, and I didn't have a lot of emotional literacy. I didn't know how to express myself in a healthy way. That was just something I was never taught by example from my parents and upbringing. Mm-hmm. And so I was seeing this and I was like, oh, damn, now I got to heal this. Okay. 2 days later in lockdown, because people don't realize when you go into the psychiatric ward, you're saying you're a threat to yourself and others. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you're not responsible for your life. We are. So we'll tell you when you can leave.
Yeah.
So you're in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you have to stay at least 7 days.
Oh, gosh.
Right. So I'm on day 3 and all my tumors came back. Raging through my lymphatic chain. So that was the bottom. This was the bottom. So I had 2 years free of cancer, almost 3. My wife just left, and it just, tipsy-turvy threw me back off the boat into the ocean, and finding my way to swimming and to avoid all these sharks that were trying to eat me. Anyway, so when I did that one night, I was crying and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? How do I get out of here? They don't offer love and I need self-love. So I asked one of the nurses at about 3 a.m. I said, what do I got to do? They're not listening to me. And he said, you just need to tell them what they want to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you got to put the actor on? I'm a good actor. I think we're all good actors. We just got to play the role really well. Yeah. So I turned on the good patient role and I started participating in all their silly activities. They, as a side note, everybody, they took my supplements away because they thought that was a threat. I couldn't take a multivitamin. I couldn't make a protein shake. Anyway, so after the fifth day, I was able to prove that I was getting better. And I wasn't taking their medication. I was just throwing it out. And I said, I'm never doing medicine ever again, because they are not, my consciousness has risen above their consciousness. So I'm here to teach you something, is really what I said. You can't teach me anything because my consciousness has risen higher than yours. Right. So you can't offer me anything. I can offer you something, or the individuals, but you can't offer me something. So I wound up earning myself a day out with my sister and my mom. And we laughed and laughed and laughed. Like we're having a breakout. We're trying to find our escape plan. We'll laugh. So it was serendipitous, but it was another place of bottoming out. And that meant when I got out of the psychiatric ward, I then had to move in with my mom and go back into my mom's house. So I was 35, and that was really feeling less manly than ever before, but also feeling like, okay, I'm never going back to medicine again. And I just started to pray a little bit. What do I need to do? So I had a mentor, as I mentioned earlier, in the Czech Institute with Paul Chek. So I emailed him that experience in the psychiatric ward. And he said, Dan, you just experienced Eckhart Tolle's life. You'll be really excited to read his book and get the audio tapes, The Power of Now.
Yeah. Life-changing book. Yeah. To anyone who hasn't heard of that book, go find it now. If you've got any health challenge, it is a must read. And it's interesting that you encountered it, because in my life, just post my diagnosis, funnily enough, that was a book that had fallen into my life. And without it, I would have gone in a very different direction. So this is very interesting how there's some similarities between what's happening in your life and what's happening in mine. And I think probably what's happening in some of our listeners' lives. So do continue. So you've now been introduced
to
the
now I'm introduced to it, but I'm not someone that was really good at reading and comprehending. I had problems with my eyes growing up. I had a number of surgeries when I was younger. My left eye doesn't focus when I read, so it's really hard with my right eye trying to focus and my left eye not focusing.
Oh gosh.
And so it's really complicated. So I didn't like it. And that's why I went into the sciences more and more athleticism. So when I was there at my house, and Paul sent me, I got the book and I started to read it. I had to read it in very small segments. And then I had to stop and say, what did I just read? So I could comprehend it, but also more importantly, I could digest and personalize what I learned. Rather than trying to consume it like it was a pastry, immediate gratification, check it off, move on. I had to be a student of this. Fantastic. And then I would take notes, and then I would meditate on it, and then I would go back and reread it. And then I went through the whole book that summer. And as I was doing that in meditation, certain things came up, because I was saying, look at God, if you give me the answers to this cancer, how I'm going to dig myself out of this hole, I'm going to share that with people in my own special way. And so finally, what was happening as a civil engineer working on environmental hazardous waste sites, it started to click on what it meant to heal the earth or help to clean up these hazardous waste sites. How can I see that in myself? How can I see that the hazardous waste sites are out there because we're full of toxicity internally, both physiologically and psychologically? So I turned it inward, and the first thing I noticed was that I had a fear, an unconscious, low-grade fear of microbes. That's the first thing that came up, because I heard voices of when we were engineers on the properties. Some engineers were talking about bringing microbes and enzymes and various things onto the property to digest the toxicity. And then I said, damn, I think I might have a phobia of germs and stuff. So I
Oh my
said,
goodness.
I need to enter into that fear of the microbial world. So I emailed my friend Paul Chek about this insight. And he sent me over to David Webster's, and he goes, Dan, you're right on track. He goes, David Webster wrote a book, Maximum Health through the colon. I forget, it's Maximum Health through colon health or something like that. Forget the name of the book. It was a long time ago. But he had a home probiotic implant that you can put into your rectum to restore your soil.
Whoa.
Think about the environment when I was on the hazardous waste sites. We had to assess the depth of toxicity in the soil. So I'm like, I just went through 6 years of chemotherapy. Never mind what I grew up with, the food I ate, the drinking, whatever. I'm toxic. I'm a toxic hazardous waste site that has a germ phobia. Let's get these probiotics going. And the fastest way is to put them where they're supposed to be. So I did the process. I did it for 21 days roughly, and I did it twice, the implant. I wanted to make sure. I was like, and that's me, overloaded a little bit. That's my personality. And in that time, I also was with Paul Chek. We were studying essential oils. So I was thinking about these essential oils and how certain oils were really helpful to raise the spiritual vibration in people. Rose oil, frankincense, myrrh, and I think there's another, the 3 wise men oils. I forget what the other one, sandalwood, and lavender and clove and various other ones. So I read somewhere that if I did an implant into the rectum with the essential oils, it'll go into the body real rapidly and communicate with the entire body. So I started filling capsules with like 30 to 40 drops of frankincense, myrrh, sandalwood, after I did the probiotic implant, and all the tumors started to go away.
Oh my goodness.
And then I said, what else am I afraid of dietarily? And I said, wow, you know what? All the time I've been on the American diet, which was you have to have low saturated fat and eat your polyunsaturated healthy vegetable oils. So I stopped the butter and I added more vegetable oil. And I was like, oh my God, I have a fear of animal fat and animal cholesterol, and I'm going to enter that. I was like, back to butter. Right. Butter is basic for health. So and then when you expand out, you see that society at large was afraid of animal fat. It was the demon in the whole health field that in the 80s.
Totally.
Right. So I said, now there are 2 nutritional phobias that are implicated in all chronic degenerative diseases as a hypothesis. The fear of microbes, germs cause illness, and the fear of saturated animal fat. And my life started to change. And here we are 20-something years later, and they're still trying to use the fear of microbes to harness our I guess lower self, our false self, and hijack our higher self. So that can't be expressed.
Yeah.
And just so the listeners know, I know you're probably someone out there, because I'm having in my head that the COVID-19 virus, remember, that's not how nature works. Nature works a different way, right? So viruses are created from within the cell as a repair process and an upgrade to your cellular machinery. That's what a virus is. And the reason why there's so much viral activity now is because people are not fasting enough. Because fasting is your way of cleaning out the cellular machine and building it up without having to use a virus.
Yeah.
Because we're all programmed for survival, and we're all programmed for optimal health. So viruses out of nature, born out of nature, come from within us, and they're so marked for our DNA repair that it can't be contagious. It's created for our own unique biological needs. Now, when someone says, well, I got it and he got it, I'm like, yeah, well, now we have to talk about our symbiotic relationship, our synchronicity amongst humans. So that means if you're coming down with it, you need to upgrade as well. That's the same thing. If females live long enough together, they'll sync their menstrual cycles. That's not contagious, by the way. It's just the,
yeah, true.
It's just it's a non-scientific part of our spiritual essence. We are all connected. So if I am around people and I don't need the upgrade because I'm doing what I need to do to keep myself upgraded, I won't get anything. It's the way it works.
Yeah.
Right. So in light of that, in 5 months, I got rid of all the tumors. Now I was left with a problem because I had planned my life to die in some ways. Now I have to plan my life to live. And I was like completely shut down from that in some ways. But I was in this path of health, healing, and transformation. And what was it in me that showed up in that gun club that I wanted to go find out? So I started an odyssey, really, to travel to various parts of the world to heal, to get healthy and heal, and to learn that spiritual essence that showed up then, and to honor it and to love and respect it. While, how do I build a body that was damaged? So how do I build that body? So that was the two things that I turn around and say, look, health is the foundation to life. And we all know that because when if you have a child or had a child, then you know the only thing you're concerned about is that child healthy. But it shouldn't start when you're giving birth. You should prepare the Garden of Eden for the seed of that soul's inspiration. Right. 1 to 2 years minimum. You want to turn that soil over. You want to get the microbes up. You want to get it fertile. You want to get it to take that seed of the soul into the Garden of Eden. And that is the Garden of Eden. And not many of us had that blessing. So we're going to all come into this world a little bit tripped up. And then we have to be stewards of our own garden.
Yeah.
Or if you are religious, you have to build your church up, which is this structure, so that the spirit of whatever, the creator, can take residence. If it's not built up, if it's in disarray, the only thing that comes in is the demon. Same power, opposite force in some way.
Yes.
So then I started the journey, and here we are 23 something years later. And it's took me about 18 to 19 years of that kind of digging to come up with finally feeling like I have a place where I'm starting to now feel the yang energy of my life to build my life. Before was to nourish, nutrition, to nourish myself. And I like people to hear this: nourish yourself.
Yes.
And then you can nourish your cells.
Yeah.
That's why I say heal the self and heal the cells. Health is the foundation to life. Love is the purpose for living.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That means instead of feeling the neediness to be loved, you become love. You are love as you are. And you feel that and you vibrate that and you experience that out. So that's the difference on the healing journey, is you shift from that neediness, that void inside you, to being able to fulfill that void with your own conscious self. And that's been the process where now I've turned that around to say, hey, everyone's called me a hero in my own life. So, and I started to come into the heroic coach training program in 2001, which fit perfectly. Another power of now, synchronicity. So here I am studying with Brian Johnson and his team of absolute astonishing human beings, trying to help everybody become the hero of their own journey.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Which means the war between vice and virtue.
Yes. Yes, to become the hero of their own journey and take patient responsibility for where they are and how they're living their life. And so much of that comes across in your story, that you have had these experiences given to you. And I mean, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I mean, for myself, as much as the things I face were challenges, I now see them as a gift, because only through facing such hardship and challenging times do you actually look outside of yourself and seek things like the intermittent fasting, the autophagy, the nutrition, the gut health, the body movement and the exercise, the actual thinking about whether it's a spiritual practice or it's a practice which in some way nourishes the mind. And all of those things come across in what you're saying, which is just wonderful, because it's like putting together a puzzle, isn't it? It's building these parts of your life, bringing them all together to actually help heal you through these practices. Just absolutely fantastic.
It's the return to wholeness first.
Yeah.
As a human being, before you can actually return to oneness.
Yeah. And when you say 7 elements of optimal health and healing, so those are the things you've discussed. Can you just list them 1 to 7 for our listeners so that they've got them?
So this isn't my original thinking, but I did personify it. So it's originally thought from Leonard Orr, who was a spiritual teacher, and he founded the 7 elements of healing. And I put it through my story, and I added to it. So, which is what we're here to do. You're supposed to personify things and add to it to help the evolution of humanity. So the earth, water, air, and fire elements is what we are. That's what's in nature. So we're nature, and so we're made up of earth, water, air, and fire. That's the body. The earth element is your digestive system, your relationship with the microbial world or the soil. It's also your relationship with the structure of the human body, the bones, the connective tissue. And I add in, at that level, we need to learn the 7 primal movement patterns that are necessary to live in the wild. They're centrally generated from the creator. We don't need to be taught how to push, pull, twist, bend, squat, lunge, and gait. Ultimately, it's all about gait, going from crawling to walking to running. But all of those patterns are included in all the movements that we do. They have to be active. Otherwise, your primal body is not online. Right. That's Paul Chek's work. You can check it out. The primal movement patterns from Paul. And now mobility movement, active mobility, getting to be like a child again is really what it's at for me. Water element. That is the circulatory system. And people automatically think the blood, but you have to think lymphatic system. You have to think cerebral spinal fluid. You have to think sexual fluids, urination. You have to think crying, tears, sweating. You have to think cold water, hot water. You have to think about being in the rivers, in the oceans. You have to be on out in the rain. Our relationship with rain, right? It's all the fluids of the body and our relationship to the water element. Brilliant. Then you got the air element. That's the respiratory system and cellular respiration. So you have mechanical breathing and you have spiritual breathing, and we need relationships on both sides of that coin. And it takes an effort to live an inspired life, because when you're born, you took a breath and it was shocking, but it was an effort.
Yeah.
And depending on how that came into you, it triggers something in your belief about yourself and the world. Then the exhale, you don't have to do anything to the exhale. Nothing. The exhale just happens. So you have the combination of effort, no effort. Move, don't move. And that's the essence of the Qigong masters. Move not to move.
Yeah.
The balance between the effort and no effort, to eating, not eating.
Yeah.
Then you have the fire element, which is the ultimate element because it represents the greatest fear, burning in hell,
Yeah.
and the greatest transformation. It's one of the greatest transformers. And it refers to light, your relationship with light. And it also has its referral into the nervous system and the hormonal system, because that's the regenerative system. It's the capacity to regenerate. And so we are really at odds with light, artificial light, blue light, all this EMFs, non-native electricity. All of that is having an influence at the highest level of our transformation in the body. So if you want to do yourself good, wear some blue blockers, be outside, get grounded.
Yeah.
Very important. Artificial light. People think about, like, they come to me, oh, I'm eating healthy. I don't eat anything artificial, but you bathe in artificial light all day, which has more of an influence over your health than anything else.
Oh, crikey. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're eating healthy, but you're not living healthy, so it doesn't matter. You know, I'll try and validate that you're trying, but you're missing an element. You're missing a relationship with an element. Then we move into mind. We all have our mind. We all are essentially, an aspect of ourselves is the thinker. We have a thinker in our body. You're not going to get rid of that.
No.
You just have to master it. It's a tool for your growth, or it's a tool for your demise. So the mind, I say we have a creative mind, we have an intellectual mind, and we have an emotional mind. And mastering those is really the essence. And if you get into the creative mind, then that's where we want to be. And it's really the essence of the power of choice. Then we go to the love element, which I mentioned before. The love element, we are love as we are. And that's awareness. And that's something else. It's something that our heart is set on, that we want love to be the purpose in our life. We want purpose and meaning in our life that actually helps to transcend our lower self and to give rise to that higher self, to listen to our soul and operate from there. That's love. And that's the hero. The hero is someone that protects the freedom from within. It's a protector, has strength for two, but it has a secret weapon. The ancients called it love. The virtue of love was their secret weapon. And it was love for self, but it was love for others. So if you're in it for yourself only, it's going to only take you so far. But when you're in it for yourself so that you can help others evolve, helping other people evolve into their true authentic nature is mine, then you feel a sense of joy. And it's not cheerleading joy, it's a different joy. And then rest. Rest makes it all work.
Yeah. Sleep
is another element that most people don't understand how powerful sleep is. And rest and uninhibited play.
Yeah. Play, sleep. Yeah, absolutely.
Recreation. Yeah, just to play. So those are the 7 elements of healing that make up our experience in life, and we have a relationship with all of those. And that's where some people just say, oh, I just do digestion. Well, that's fine, but you're missing a whole bunch of elements.
Yeah.
Right? Because a belief system in their mind can affect their digestion. So if you're working at the earth element trying to help their digestion and they don't pull a belief system, they're going to be disappointed. Now, here's the interesting thing. The number one belief system that we have is disease is inevitable and out of our control.
Yeah. Very true.
That's a belief. And so I'm here to say, take a look at that belief. Why do you choose to believe that? Well, because it keeps you in a victim state.
Yes.
So I have to work with, you need to shift that belief. And you can. Yeah. And
Yes,
and
and
here we
that's
go.
that. Yes, and it's, that last point is particularly interesting to hear, because when I first started this podcast, one of the things that I believed very strongly was that the body has an innate ability to heal, and that so much of what the patient is told, the patient takes on board, and they believe, because the doctors have the years of experience, and sometimes, you know, the medical profession can be great. But there was part of me that truly believed that if you could get into the mindset of the creative visualization of feeling, I am healthy, I am healing, all of that, then actually you could believe that you could become well, and then you could heal it. So it would be feel it, believe it, and then it'd be either achieve it or heal it. But it was that whole thing of actually, yes, the mind is so, so powerful. And if you haven't got all of those different factors working together, if you are not, I suppose, like having a garden, isn't it? If you don't water everything, your garden won't grow. You have a lovely flower bed on one side, but on the other side, you know, your vegetables will have gone terrible. So gosh, no, that's there is so much that you said today, and I will say this at the beginning of the podcast, people, they should have a notebook out and be taking down things. And I will at the end of this also, you know, say to you, let's get some show notes that cover some of these brilliant book recommendations for people and things they can go and research, because at the end of the day, everything that you've mentioned has just been like, oh well, hang on, yeah, no, that needs some that needs a little bit more reading up on. And so, well, I'm just looking at some of the questions that I'd looked to kind of ask you, but you've covered so much. Let's have a look here.
While you're
So,
thinking about it, I'll share a summary of what you were alluding to, like trying to get the mind around to what we were just sharing. Sometimes the mind can't. Like my mind was so shattered that I couldn't. So here's the thing: spirit through the mind heals the body if your mind is healthy. But spirit through the body can help heal the mind. So you can focus on restoring your church, building up the church, the body, through the earth, water, air, and fire. That gives the mind something practical to do. So you don't have to dig into a lot of stuff right now, because you might not have the bodily energy to actually feel something, because you need energy to feel.
yeah,
You need energy to sleep well.
absolutely.
So we need to actually look at it as, wow, okay, but spirit through the mind heals the body, spirit through the body heals the mind, but spirit, the heart of the matter, is the common denominator. Cancer taught me how to live, and divorce taught me how to love. How come we're so adamantly afraid of these things?
Totally. We, as a society, we grew up terrified of both, don't we? And if we actually were to reframe how we, it's a bit like failure, I suppose. We fear failure, but in actual fact, failure is an opportunity for learning and growth. And in terms of your the sort of, well, what would you say your vision is for the future of your coaching practice, and its role in
Just one person at a
eradication?
time. My vision's one person at a time. When I think far out, I get trapped in it. But honestly, we've created a society and culture that's based on disease, dysfunction, and delusion. And we've normalized it. So my vision is how can we turn that around to health, healing, and transformation? A culture based on that.
Yes.
And a society based on that. We can, but I can't do it alone. I can only do my part.
Yes.
This is a we project.
I like, yeah.
Yeah. I can only do my part. That's why the only part I can do is play a role with whoever's in front of me as I'm coaching them, or in some of my workshops that I do, conscious breathing workshops. But it entails essentially the elements, right? All the elements.
Brilliant.
And so I can only do my part, but everyone else has to step up and become the hero of their own journey and do their part for health, healing, and transformation. And when I say transformation, folks, that means you're living from the heart of the matter. That's the transformation, is that, whoa, okay, I am the creator of my reality. I am the hero of my own journey. I do have a soul that I'm listening to and I'm acting on that. I am my true self in all my relationships as much as I can. We are human. It's not going to be perfect at all. Right? But we just keep getting back up every day.
Yeah. Every day. And every day is a new opportunity for actually stepping up to the plate and embracing the possibility of health through practices that will support this possibility. And that is so much what comes through your incredible story. And often I would say at the end of something like this, I'd say, well, what would you recommend 3 books? But you've actually mentioned several authors throughout this, which have just been brilliant.
Well, one more. If you want one more, I mentioned Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, right? Maximum Health. I don't know if it's still available, but that's just about the microbial community, and you can Google that. There's plenty of books on that. But then the Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate is a really good read for people.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah.
The Myth of Normal. Absolutely highly suggested.
Gosh.
And I have a whole list of others, but those are really great. Maybe if we do another chat down the road, I have another book that's coming out in November, not mine, but I'll mention it. Actually, let's do it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, please do.
So my coach, Brian Johnson, has taken 25 years to write a book called Eradicate, Activating Your Heroic Potential. It comes out November 14th, so you can pre-order it.
Super.
And that is 451 micro chapters in a 1,000-page book. Now, here's the thing. It's about becoming the hero of your own journey. 451 is what is needed to get a fire started. Remember I talked about fire transformation?
Yeah.
Fire. 451 degrees is necessary to turn wood into fire. So he put 451 chapters to ignite your true authentic self.
Gosh.
And it's amazing. It's all about vice versa virtue. It's all about, am I being my true self or am I being my false self? Am I being inauthentic to fit in? Or am I actually being my authentic self to change and be the transformation we need in the world? We need more heroes in the world right now.
We do.
Because the vice is so strong. We even see it on billboards. Yeah. Cannabis, next exit, find your potential. Oh, winners gamble at this casino.
Yeah.
They're on billboards, they're on buses. That's vice dressed up as virtue. And that's why if you're virtuous, people think you're the devil, the Antichrist, that something's wrong with you.
Oh, no.
Isn't that crazy? It's crazy when you go out there and you start being your true authentic self. People start pushing back until a few people start appreciating it.
Fantastic. And again, so very encouraging to hear someone so brave and courageous to actually step into the challenge, step into this life that's been given to you, and to now be using it to the greater good. Simply fantastic.
How we live is for the greater good.
Yeah.
It's simple. It's how you live. You don't have to do anything special, just how you live and the choices you make. That's it. Don't think of saving the world or saving humanity. Just show up as your best version of yourself and that will happen.
Super. And I think that's probably a good point at which to kind of bring this to a close for now. But before I pause the recording, please do tell the listeners your website address and any other social media links that you would like to share now with us, and then that would be great.
Sure. Just go to Dan Hegerich, Dan, HEGERICH.com. There you can actually send me an email if you want to have a conversation with me. Just let me know who you are and what you want out of life. And then I'll send you a link. You can get a 30-minute free consultation because everything starts with a dialogue. Everything starts with a dialogue. Secondly, speed is a force. So if you felt goosebumps, if you felt really drawn into what we were sharing today, speed is a force, because then the old monkey mind will get in and talk you out of it. Go with that inner voice and that feeling, the healing feeling. Go with that, act on it quickly, and you'll start to feel the shaking of transformation happening. So do that. And then from there, we can communicate other places. I do have a Facebook social page, but I'm moving out of that and I'm moving into my my business page, Dan Hegerich. That's a Facebook page. You can check that out, Dan Hegerich at Facebook. And that's it right now. I mean, I'm on Instagram. I don't know all that stuff right now. It irritates me actually. So
Yes, there are a lot of places to be, and I think sometimes that can be a bit overwhelming for people. So actually, that having that website address, and as you say, if people felt the goosebumps, if people could hear and actually feel like that there were things that were coming up that were going clink, tick, yep, that's making sense. Yeah, there's light bulb.
You got to act on it. You got to have the masculine energy, the movement. The masculine energy says, I act on that nourishment that I just felt.
Yeah.
Right. So
absolutely.
Beautiful. And I look forward to meeting at least one more person. Just let's do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Dan. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to just stop it all now. And there we go.